Do you read your Goodreads reviews?
I haven't in a long time.
What really gets me is when people tag you in a bad review. Has this ever happened to you?
No, that's never happened to me. Oh my God. Okay.
I mean, look, not every book is for every reader. Don't screenshot your Goodreads review and then tag me on Instagram, please.
I didn't need to hear this on a Tuesday morning as I'm making my breakfast or whatever. So please don't tag me. My name is Alejandro Heredia, and I'm the author of LOCA.
My name is Katie Yee, and I'm the author of MAGGIE, or A Man and a Woman Walk into a Bar, and you're watching The Right Reasons.
I figured that a good place to start would be to just, I don't know, talk about how it feels to have a book out in the world. It is such a different experience being an author from being a writer.
Yes.
Writing feels so lonely in so many ways, and then you're sort of thrust into the world to talk about your work. How's it been for you?
It's been exactly as you said, kind of surreal. Forgive me, but I'm such a Swiftie that now I'm just thinking about the fact that she just announced Life of a Showgirl, and I'm like, the difference between the tortured poet and the life of a showgirl is kind of exactly what you're saying. But it's so funny because I feel like for so long, it's just been me hiding out in my room, talking to my imaginary friends. And then I've had the incredible privilege of going to these book clubs and hearing other people debate about the characters and their feelings. And I'm just it's so weird that you know them. How do you know what I mean?
Yeah. It feels like people are talking about my imaginary friends.
Exactly. And you're and feeling strongly about them. I'm oh my goodness.
Yeah. Sometimes when I walk into a classroom, especially when I'm talking to students, the first question that I ask them is, okay, who do you have beef with? And who are you mad at in the story? And how can we sort of process this together? Yeah. And that seems to be a good icebreaker. People feel really strongly about characters.
I love it. What has been the most surprising answer to that question?
The most surprising answer is that people are really mad at one character specifically. And I kind of understood that might happen. There's a character, Charo, who makes very difficult choices throughout the novel. And I kind of expected that they would be unpopular choices, but it was still surprising to sort of hear a consensus of people finding her very difficult.
That is interesting.
But I don't mind that. I quite like writing difficult characters.
Yeah.
How do you feel now that the book is out about your characters? Do you see them differently?
I think. Well, and with your character, I think that's so interesting because I feel like you've portrayed her with such nuance. And I think for me, the answer to that question that's kind of surprising. Last night, I was listening to a bunch of lovely women debate whether or not the ex-husband character ever loved her or is capable of love. And I was that's kind of surprising because that's not how I thought I had portrayed him, with some tenderness and some nuance, but so fun to hear people, I don't know, fight about it.
Yeah. I mean, so much of this journey has been about, for me at least, about forfeiting some of my own vision. I certainly, everything or most of what I did in the book is with intention and thought, but some part of the process is about sort of letting go and understanding that these people, these imagined people are no longer yours in some way.
No, that totally makes sense. And I don't know if you've been getting this question, and I'm curious if you have and what your answer has been, but some people are are you going to write a sequel? What happens after this to them? And for me, my answer has always been that's none of my business. They're yours now.
Yeah.
But how about you?
Yeah, I do get that question a lot. I was very intentional with the end of my novel. I wanted it to feel like a jumping off point. And I think I don't know, one of the effects of that is that readers want to know where they land then. So I get that question a lot, and I always answer, I have no interest in sequels, at least right now.
Yeah.
These characters are gonna, the readers get to make up their own mind.
Yeah.
Imagine what their lives might be like afterward. Yeah. We both are writing about New York. And
I think in New York that you don't really see in classic, canonical New York novel.
Yes. How was that experience for you?
I have a very hard time imagining places. So for me, basing a lot of the book in New York, in Brooklyn, was just my inability to picture some other places. So like, you know, the bar that they go to is based on like the bar on my corner. And I think it's funny because in editing, I actually feel like we took a lot of the like proper names of like Prospect Park and like the Natural History Museum. Like I think we took all of those out because we kind of wanted it to feel like it could be anywhere.
Yeah.
Like in the same way that my narrator doesn't have like a name that you know.
Yeah.
We wanted to take like the very overt New Yorkness out of it. But I will say the one thing that I was really excited to get to put on the page is like this facet of like deep Brooklyn that I grew up with that I feel like I haven't really like seen in books. There's like this one scene in particular where the narrator and her mom are going to this like hair salon, this like Chinese hair salon, and the hairdresser, you only know which one she's at based on like the colorful oat tag poster that's in the window that just says like this hairdresser is here. Yeah, and that was fun to put in there because I feel like it's so recognizable if you like grew up in the neighborhood and you know it. And I'm sure that you have like similar feelings about your portrayal.
Yeah. Well, before I answer, I want to ask you, did you ever sort of fear that, I guess as you were writing that scene in particular, did you ever fear, oh, some readers just won't get this or won't be able to connect, and then some readers will be able to get this and connect? Did you worry about that at all? Or
I think have you read the book Cinema Love?
Yes.
Jia Ming-Tai? Okay. So incredible book. And I think reading his novel about like a really specific, really textured Chinatown that I knew really intimately but hadn't really seen on the page kind of gave me the permission or the courage to kind of just say this, if you get it, you get it. And if you don't, that's also okay. How about you? Yeah,
I mean, shout out to Andy. I love that novel. Cinema Love is incredible. I think, you know, similarly, I kind of had a chip on my shoulder when I first started writing LOCA in regards to representations of New York. It always seemed to me that New York City existed in literature and in film and TV for white women.
Yes.
You know, you watch things like Sex and the City or Girls or any of these sort of big
Friends,
Friends. Yeah, these big texts, and you don't see any of my people, our people in these stories. And working class immigrants, working class people in New York City are the people that sort of make it thrive, that make it the incredible city that it is.
Exactly.
So a big project of mine from the beginning was ensuring that I was representing this community in the Bronx with as much nuance and texture and complexity as possible. I feel really, really strongly about writing a story about the Bronx that is a New York City story.
Yes.
We seldom get that kind of representation in a rigorous way.
Yeah. You succeeded in that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
What have been, though, your like New York novel like influences?
That's funny. Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about that. I read Let the Great World Spin by Paula McCann a couple years ago, and that is actually a really incredible novel about the Bronx, or centered around characters that mostly live in the Bronx. That to me was a novel that gave me permission. When I think about influence, I'm always thinking about the books and the writers that gave me permission to be as free as possible on the page. That was a book that gave me permission to write about the Bronx rigorously. I also love House of Mirth. I think just reading about sort of New York City in a different time, the early 1900s, was just fun. And I'm currently reading Grace Paley's short stories, and she's a Jewish writer from the 20th century who lived in the Bronx, was an incredible activist, and she's sort of opening my mind up to how to write about the Bronx and New York in a humorous way. She's so funny.
Yeah.
On the page. How about you? What are some of your influences?
Aside from our friend Andy, I'm thinking of, speaking of white women, but I feel like the first thing that's coming to my mind is The Best of Everything. Have you read this?
I have not read that.
It takes place in kind of this like Mad Men era, like Midtown, but it's all of these young women who are like working in publishing, which like I used to work in publishing. So that bit felt very relatable. But kind of what you were saying, like it was fun to read about New York in this different time, over 50 years, 75 years ago, really, and to see how much is different and how much is exactly the same.
Yeah. I mean, I just feel so strongly about demystifying this place. I mean, Zadie Smith said in an interview once that walking through New York City feels like walking through ideology. You're just walking through ideas that people have about this place. And I'm just interested in sort of cutting back some of those ideas or resisting some of those ideas about New York to show, you know, what it's like for those of us who grew up here, born here, and went to high school here and call this place our home, you know, in a very different way than folks who have, you know, moved here more recently.
Yes.
Yeah.
Speaking of upbringing.
Yes.
Motherhood, I feel like, is a big theme in both of our books. And I was curious if you could speak to, maybe just why it looms so large in your novel and your own, kind of way into that topic.
Yeah, I mean, the short answer is mommy issues. I was trying to tease out some of my own mommy issues in the text, but the serious answer is that I don't know. I think as a gay man, I grew up feeling very attuned to my mother's experiences and the women in my life, including my mother's sisters and their friends and their cousins. They seemed to be living such complex lives as they were trying to navigate all the responsibilities of motherhood and domesticity and being a partner and having a job. I mean, in my head, it was always a question of how is this person doing all of these different things and living all these different lives at once, and sometimes carrying it with grace and often not carrying it with grace.
Right.
And so the part of the novel began with the character of Charo, me asking myself questions about women like my mother who immigrated to the Bronx in the 1990s. The specific question was, who would my mother and women like my mother have, who would they have been if they would have had a group of friends to support them through leaving their homes behind and coming to a new country? My mother lived a very lonely life in so many ways, and women like my mother lived such lonely lives just trying to work and survive. So I wanted to know, what if she would have had a group of friends, or what if women like them would have had a group of friends to just like support them through the difficulties of being alive in general.
Yeah.
How about you?
I do want to put a pin in this topic of like friendship, because I think this is also something that kind of looms large for both of our stories. I think for me, a lot of it is, you know, the book deals with breast cancer, which is something that I watched my mother and my grandmother go through. And for me, I wanted to kind of explore this topic in fiction as a way to kind of get my hands around it, to understand it a little bit better. But honestly, so much of the joy in writing this book has been putting like the bedtime stories that the narrator tells her kids and basing them off of the Chinese myths that I got from my own mother. I like completely credit her and like her storytelling to my like love of writing fiction. I grew up with her bedtime stories with these Chinese myths that were passed down. And so I really wanted to honor her stories by putting them in here that way.
That's beautiful. I think so much about when writers are asked about influence, or often asked about what our favorite books are or writers, but it is so often that for many of us, depending on where in the world we come from and our cultures come from, we're also getting a lot of influence from oral traditions and storytelling in our families. I mean, I grew up in a family where every time we would get together for a birthday party or whatever it was, people would sit around in a circle and we would just talk for like 3-4 hours and tell stories about Santo Domingo, about my parents and when they first got to the Bronx, and just all these different stories of their lives. That mode of storytelling influenced my work just as much as, you know, my favorite books and my favorite writers.
And that's so clear, too, because the way that your dialogue pops on the page, right? The way that your character is sound. I feel like you've captured that feeling exactly. But yeah, I feel you. I feel like I grew up like going camping every summer, so like sitting around the campfire and just kind of chatting and sharing stories that way. I wanted to find out something that I thought was so cool when I was reading your novel. We both talk about the moon and like the stories around the moon.
Yes.
And I was like, that is so fun and beautiful. And I think we both, maybe you want to share your moon story.
Yeah, so in the novel, in LOCA, Sal is one of the protagonists, is obsessed with the sky, and he looks up at the moon and the stars often. And that love of astronomy comes from stories that his grandmother used to tell him about how there used to be oceans on the moon, and there used to be fish and dolphins, and sort of this fantastical retelling of the history of the moon then inspired sort of his interest in astronomy, and sort of propels him to then develop his own version of the American dream, right? Did your family's own storytelling come into play in your writing of that as well?
Yes, yes. I have this like visceral memory of like standing in the driveway when I was like a kid and looking at the full moon, and my grandma coming up behind me and telling me like, you see those little speckles on the moon? Like the Chinese believe that there's like a tree up there, and it grows every night. And this man that's kind of tasked, he's being punished, he's up there like cutting the tree down every night, and then it grows back the next day, and this is his like eternal punishment. But that kind of accounts for all the shapes and the shadows of the moon. But I just thought it was so cool that we were both that's like all storytelling is, I think, is we're all just trying to explain the moon.
No, that's beautiful. And I love when I find those commonalities, themes of like in common with fellow writers that are writing right now, whether it's the moon or whether it's about motherhood or friendship. I think we're both writing about friendship in very serious ways. What made you interested in writing about friendship?
I feel like there are so many like quote unquote divorce novels that I have like read and like loved and obsessed over. But pretty much in every single one of them, I read them and I'm like, where is her best friend? And that's why I loved the question that you had posed kind of as a jumping off point for your novel. Like, what would it have looked like for your mother if she had had a group of friends to support her, to like push her gently and ask her hard questions? I think similarly, the role of friends is so vital in my life, and I wanted to give my character a best friend to kind of get her through hard times, and to kind of just be there with her. Something that LOCA deals with is the way that friendships kind of have to grow and stretch and change to accommodate different circumstances. I'm thinking specifically, I hope this isn't too much of a spoiler, I don't think so. I'm thinking specifically of this like scene that you've written when they're all at the beach. And Sal and Charo have like had this falling out, and then they're kind of trying to figure out how to talk about something really hard that they've both been through. I'm interested in the ways that like the language and the emotional register of friendships have to change. And I was just hoping that you could speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I felt really strongly about ensuring that the way that I wrote friendship wasn't just about the good parts. It bugs me a little bit the way that we talk about friendship in our contemporary moment, as if friends are the people that you only go to when you want to go to brunch or you want to go party with. You want to sort of, that friendship is a place that you go to for convenience or out of convenience, rather than a relationship like any other that you are responsible to, that you are committed to, and that you have to work on very seriously. In that scene in the beach, Sal and Charo go on a walk and they're having a very difficult conversation, and they're pushing each other and they're hurting each other. And that to me felt like a responsible way of writing about friendship, because it just felt true to my own life, right? The friendships that I have valued are the friendships that have lasted through time, through conflict resolution and some really difficult conversations. So I just wanted to show the truth of that
Yeah.
on the page, you know?
Yeah. I feel like if I've learned one thing at all through my 20s, it is that like your friends are going to do what they're going to do,
Yes.
and like you won't always agree with them, and you're going to have to figure out how to talk about that. So I loved that you put that there in such a central way.
Thank you. I wanted to ask you about something that I think about a lot, and I haven't sort of landed on how I feel entirely. But you mentioned that in your book there are these pieces of your culture that you're sort of in storytelling that you're bringing from your own life into the text that you're exploring in the book. Did you ever have any sort of hesitation around what components of your culture or your background or your own family's history to sort of put into the text? Were there moments where you hesitated? Were there moments where you were just like, oh, I'm not going to overthink this. I'm just going to go for it. And I asked that, I will give some context. I asked that because sometimes it feels to me like writers of color are expected to do sociological work in our novels, right? That we are expected to write characters, but also explain, in my case, for example, what do Dominicans eat for breakfast and what do they dance to? And like all these sort of like trivial, to me, that feel like trivial things that don't actually have anything to do with what I'm trying to write about, but because we are writers of color, we are expected to, again, do this almost sociological work on the page.
Yeah, I mean, even in the case of LOCA, like, just like, I'm sure you and your editor probably had all these debates about what to translate, what to put in English, right? Yeah. This is something that I feel like I'm still trying to figure out. I think for me, I shied away from writing about race, putting anything that has to do with like my family's culture in writing for a really long time. In high school, my first ever boyfriend was Chinese, like from China, and he told me once that he didn't think I was like Asian enough to write an Asian American novel. And I think that really like scared me, and I just avoided it for so long. And then I had the good luck of, during the pandemic, like I had some fellowships with like the Asian American Writers Workshop and with Kundiman, and there I found like this incredible Asian American community where we could kind of grapple with identity and how much of it to put in the text, and that was really important. But I think, right, exactly, we do this thing where it's like you're expected to put your race in there. But if you put too much, is it like you're selling your identity? And if you don't put enough of it, are you neglecting your community?
Yes.
And I think that's a really hard line to walk that I still like. I still don't know.
And I don't know, I tend to think that each writer is allowed the freedom to make their own choice about how they want to toe that line. I don't think it's always fair to ask a writer to represent an entire ethnic group. You know what I mean? Like it's a silly expectation to place on an artist, and yet it does feel like we have that pressure sometimes to represent and then represent well.
Right.
I always tell people I actually have no interest in representing my culture. I tell people, I'm like, I can barely represent myself from one moment to another. You know? What I am interested in is in pushing people to think and feel something new about the world that they've never thought or felt before. And that includes other Dominican writers and readers. But that's, for me, that also includes anyone who might pick up this text, whether they've been to the Bronx or not, whether they know where the Dominican Republic is on the map or not. The text is for everyone. Because what I'm asking myself is some serious human questions.
Well, and I think, like, I don't know about you, but like growing up, like in high school, there was like obviously we talk about the canon. Big eye roll, the canon. And I think the only book I ever had to read by an Asian writer in school was Amy Tan, right? The Joy Luck Club. I feel like that's like the classic one. And I think we do this thing where we categorize, at least in school, right? This is like Asian American literature, right? If you want to read more like that, you have to take a class on Asian American literature. That's why I love what you said about we're just asking human questions, right? Like the race element is present but not central, right? We're also talking about a ton of other things, friendship breakups and grief and, you know, all these
illness, divorce. I mean, everything. Yeah,
Everything.
yeah. I would be curious to know, how do you parse through your own emotions as you're writing your novel? How do you parse through your own ideas about relationships and grief and loss and all of these things? Are there moments where you have to stop because it gets like too intense, or do you feel more emotionally detached as you're writing?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think what is helpful for me, writing fiction is like just the way that I process things and like the way that I understand the world. But creating characters whose lives are like quite different from my own kind of does help me create that distance, that emotional distance. So I can be working through, you know, my mom's cancer diagnosis, but I can give it to like a different character. I can be working through my own heartbreak, but I can give it to, you know, someone who's going through a divorce in fiction instead. And I think that kind of helps. Like that's where like a little bit of the writing as therapy comes in, I think. But also for me, what's very central, and I'm curious about your answer to this as well. What's really important to me when I write, though, is I want it to feel playful. I want it to feel joyful. Like I always want to preserve that sense of play in my work. And I think that I've tried to do that here with like humor by giving, you know, this narrator a best friend that she can kind of like verbally spar with.
Yeah.
How about you? How emotionally taxing is writing for you?
Well, first of all, I just want to say I thank you for sharing that, because I see myself so much in what you just shared. I think often people ask me like, where are you? Where am I in the book? And the truth is that, you know, in so many ways I'm everywhere in the book. And in other ways I'm nowhere, because my job is to take a step back and try to find the difference between my own emotions and my own feelings and the feelings of my characters. Sometimes my own feelings cloud the thing that I'm trying to write about. And so it's this interesting dance between being in touch with what I'm thinking and feeling, and also trying to be in touch with the feelings and thoughts of this imagined person.
Yeah.
But I will say it is also true for me that LOCA started from a moment of incredible loss for me, the loss of a loved one. And
I'm sorry.
Yeah, thank you. And I didn't know what to do with myself at that point in my life, and I thought, well, I better do something with myself.
Yeah.
So I started writing this book, and I wasn't writing about my own grief, but I was writing about grief and just being able to ask myself serious intellectual questions about what it's like to lose a loved one.
Yeah.
How one deals with that, how one makes a life after that loss. To me, that part of it was incredibly cathartic. Sometimes when I'm writing about myself, it feels like I can't quite see. But when I'm writing about the feelings of this imagined person, I sort of have a clear understanding of what I'm feeling, which is interesting.
Yeah. Well, and what's so great about your book too is that we get close to the whole cast of characters, right? Like I feel like it's not told in first person, and I think that, I mean, I don't mean to speak for you, but I imagine that like writing close to all these different perspectives is really clarifying emotionally.
Yes, it was. I think writing a cast of characters was really helpful, because then I can ask myself these different questions from the perspective of the different characters.
Right.
Did you feel, this is a little tangential, but did you feel a sense of protection of your family members as you were exploring some of the themes in the book? How was it to sort of take from some questions in your own personal life and then sort of explore them on the text, while also, I don't know, making sure that you were caring for the people in your life?
Yeah. I was very nervous about this. I mean, like I said, none of the actual plot of this novel is like based in a one-to-one way on anything in my real life. But my mom was one of my early readers, especially since a lot. I feel that I've put not a lot of her life necessarily, but a lot of like the stories that she's passed down to me. And the breast cancer bit, of course, was inspired by something that did happen and is happening to her. So she was definitely one of my early trusted readers in this process. And I was probably the most nervous I've ever been to get notes back.
Yeah.
What was so interesting, though, is she called me up when she finished reading it. And she was like, I'm surprised by how many like real life details are in here. And I was like, oh, God, okay, like we can talk about it. I can take out anything that you want. Like, I'm ready. And what she proceeded to talk about, though, was she was like, well, this lamp that you described that's in the house, like that's a lamp that we owned. And like this other bit that you've described is part of like, you know, this home that we've had. And I was like, that's not what I thought you were going to grab onto at all. But that's so interesting. And the rest, she was like, oh, yeah, you should. I feel honored. Leave the rest of it in.
That's so beautiful and also interesting. I always, I don't know, I tell students and people who are interested in writing that so much of writing is intentional and so much of it is grounded in craft and us really, you know, hurting over the page, trying to write the right sentence, et cetera, et cetera. There is so much work that goes into it. And also so much of writing comes via intuition.
Yeah.
And so it's so interesting that the lamp made it into the text. Did you know that the lamp had sort of made it into the book?
I mean, I did, but I thought it was like such an innocuous detail. But that she was like, "Oh yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about." And the other thing I want to say is, so my grandmother, she passed right after I sold the book, so kind of a bummer.
Sorry.
Thank you. She had really wanted to like go into a bookstore and like buy a copy.
Yeah.
And she's a very frugal woman, so that was like high praise. That she was like, "Don't give me a free copy. I'd like to go and buy one." But the daughter character in the novel, her name is Lily. I named her after my grandmother. And I told my grandma this like on her deathbed. I was like, I named one of the characters after you. And she said, is she pretty? That was her question.
Yeah.
Which I thought was so funny. And so, I mean, yeah, just such a good, just like the perfect response.
Yeah. Oh, that's so beautiful.
And the way that things can be kind of funny even when they're kind of sad.
Yes.
But yeah, it's interesting because with my family, at least with my grandparents, there was always going to be a bit of a language barrier that I think was kind of freeing in writing.
Yeah.
How about you?
Yeah, I was very curious about how people in my life would respond to the book. Some of them haven't read it. I don't think my mom has read it, but my mom also can't read in English, so there's the language barrier. It has been interesting because some people are like, I think some of the people in my life are like trying to figure out things about me as they're like reading it. They're like, oh, you're this person, or this happened to you, or you know, sort of they're trying to like puzzle piece what's going on. And then other people, I mean, my friends are just, I don't know, best word for it is like amazed. I'm also amazed to have a book in the world. It really feels like a miracle in so many ways.
Yeah.
How long did you work on your novel?
On and off for the past like 5 years, I want to say. How about you?
7. So yeah, around the same time. It really is a long journey.
A long journey.
But I am glad one of the I don't know, nice things practical things about having the book out into the world is that now people know that I'm like a writer for real, you know?
They're like, oh, you weren't just shut up in your room, like talking to imaginary friends.
Yes. And my parents too, I'm like, look, like I was for real when I said I was writing and working on a book. Because it is, at least for a debut writer, I think it's a little opaque for the people in one's life for a little while. People are like, writing a book, it's been so many years, are you still writing that thing?
Yeah. Well, and especially, I don't know about you, but like I'm like the opposite of a Nepo baby. Like I don't have any like writers in my family, right? Like the arts and culture, like, you know, my dad's an engineer, right? Like very different from what my family had come to like expect of what the next iteration of the American dream looked like.
Yeah. Can I ask you, is it too early to ask you what you're working on? Are you daydreaming about another story? Are you sort of taking time for yourself to just like process this huge thing that has happened?
So, and I'm curious about you as well, but so my day job, my 9 to 5, is I work at the Brooklyn Museum. And so I think the next, I am toying with the idea of another novel. I think you got to make your day job work for you. So I think it's going to maybe take place in a museum. I think we're going to explore grief and love lost. And I think we're going to play with structure a little bit. I think coming back to the sense of play is really important to me right now, because I think, and like, yeah, I'm curious if you have this experience too. Like, now that you know that you've seen the way that the sausage is made, and you've seen like the whole, like the marketing and like, you know, the critical reviews and everything like that. How does it feel coming back to the blank page for you?
Well, I love writing more than anything else in the world, and publishing is nice. It's incredible. And I'm the whole point is to write for me. And so it has been incredibly valuable for me to go, after sort of being on tour and being in front of people for months and months on end, to sort of go back to the blank page and prove to myself that I can still do this, you know, and not only that, but prove to myself that I can do it from a place of love.
Yeah.
You know, publishing is beautiful, and it's also really challenging in so many ways. You know, you're sort of at the mercy of readers and Goodreads.
Yeah.
Just all these different things.
Do you read your Goodreads reviews?
I haven't in a long time. I did the first few weeks, and then I was like, okay, I really should stop.
Yeah. Well, because there's this weird amount of time where there's like, people have galleys, but there's nothing for you to do yet.
Yeah.
And you kind of need some sort of like, dopamine hit is not the right expression because it's not always good.
Yeah.
But like, you need some sort of like feeling like it's out there, and you kind of want to know what people are saying.
Yes. And then you slowly learn, oh, maybe I don't need to know everything that everyone thinks about this book, you know?
What really gets me is when people tag you in a bad review. Has this ever happened to you?
No, that's never happened to me. Oh my God. Okay.
People are out here.
Can you please tell me about that experience?
Oh my God. I mean, look, not every book is for every reader. I totally, no bad feelings about that. I totally understand if this is not what you were looking for.
Yeah.
Don't screenshot your Goodreads review and then tag me on Instagram, please.
That is so funny. Yeah, I think people have access to authors in such a new way. And in some way, sometimes that can be really exciting, because then you get to connect with readers that are like engaging with the book and talking about the book, and that's really exciting. But then the drawback is that you do get to sort of hear opinions. So you're like, I didn't need to hear this on a Tuesday morning as I'm making my breakfast or whatever, you know? So please don't tag me.
Please don't tag me. Exactly.
Yeah, but it has felt really good to come back to the blank page and to be a writer in this way.
Yeah. They say that the sophomore slump, right? Everyone's like, the second novel is like the hardest one to get back to.
Yeah.
Can I ask what you're toying with?
Yes, I am writing another novel about more mommy issues.
I'm excited.
Yes. And it's been, again, incredibly liberating. I haven't felt any sort of pressure from the outside world to make it anything that it's not.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very protective of my writing practice because, again, that is the point. Again, publishing is beautiful and it's nice, and engaging with readers is beautiful and nice, but I'm a writer first because I love it, and it feels like I can't live without it, and so I have to protect that as much as possible. So it's been nice going back to the blank page and then doing it in a way that feels like it's for me, not for any reader or publisher or whatever.
Yeah.
How about you? How's it been, like, sort of contemplating a sophomore project and thinking about sort of the response to the first novel? Like, does that get in the way at all, or?
I think I'm trying really hard to make them very different, like, projects, if that makes sense. So I think even like yesterday, I was at the stationery store and I saw it was on sale, the notebook that I had written a lot of MAGGIE in its final stages. And I was like, oh, it's on sale. And I loved that notebook. And then I was like, you know what? I have to buy something else. Like, I think it just needs to feel totally new and totally fresh again.
Yeah. And that's beautiful. And I will say that it sounds like you're allowing yourself to play in like a different way, which is, that's really exciting and beautiful.
A new sandbox.
Yes, a new sandbox. Love that.